Okay, so today was the first day of, I guess it's a new project. It's technically not one, but yesterday I got the first draft of that first short story completed, and so that's been set aside. Um, what I'm doing today is I'm going through an old short story and making edits and revisions to it. This will be the second story in my collection. And fortunately, again, this one was already written. The first draft was already written. I worked on that about, I'd say, almost a year ago, probably about 10 months ago, something like that. So now just going through it at this point and basically making corrections. Nice thing about this is obviously going into the second story of my collection with a first draft already written, it just makes the process much easier. I'd spoken very early on about how when I started this project, I had a couple old short stories that would fit well in the collection, but need to be modified a little bit, and that's what I've done today. Is simply gone through and just kind of making some initial modifications to the story to make sure that characters in place and all that stuff are the same, because the whole collection basically takes place in one town, with basically interconnected characters throughout these different stories. I guess my initial impression upon going through it, it was good to see something that I had done 10 months ago, and to come at it now with kind of a sense of fresh eyes. The work looks like something I wrote, but I don't have necessarily any kind of attachment to it. So it was nice to be able to go through it and simply just make these initial corrections without any issue. If I had decided to edit the story maybe a month after I had written it, I wouldn't be able to do that. There'd be too much attachment to it. My mind would be too set on certain things. Time basically is basically really is the best editor, just because the more distance you have from your piece, the more you're able to look at it critically and make adjustments to it. And that's, to be honest, that's kind of the whole point of editing is to go at it with a sense of detachment, to approach it with a sense of almost being a different person, as if you're a whole different person now. The sort of cliched phrase is first draft, write for yourself, second draft, write for the audience. There's been a lot of statements about that, but going at this process as someone else, as though it is geared towards someone else, is important, because there's too much emotional attachment when you keep something for yourself, or when you don't change your mind state towards the work itself. And time is the best way to do it. There are many authors who would put works away famously for months on end, 3 months, 6 months, a year, and then basically go back to the drawer and pull it out. Honestly, I don't quite have that much time. I don't think, to put all my works aside that long, but certainly several months of not looking at something, that's the best way to do it. And so that was me today. That was basically what I was doing today. I was simply looking at a work from about 10 months ago and going through it. And if you ever doubt yourself, if you ever doubt your skill as a writer, if you ever kind of doubt that maybe you aren't a real writer, in a sense, right? That sort of like those moments where you're like, I'm not a true writer, my work's terrible. Look back at something you've done a year ago, and just see it. And I imagine you'll come away with one of two thoughts. Either the work you look at is awesome, like you go, wow, this is, I wrote this a year ago, wow, I can't believe I even wrote this is really good. Or you'll think it's absolutely terrible, and you'll recognize that you have probably grown in terms of skill in comparison to where you were. Either which way, that can be a very, very helpful and very encouraging thing. That can be a very, very sort of confidence building moment to look back at old works. In my case, I was pretty impressed actually with what I did. Yeah, it was 10 months ago, so it wasn't that long ago necessarily. this was a pretty good story. This was pretty good as far as the prose goes. I was pretty impressed for especially for a first draft. I was like, you know what, this ain't bad. This is not bad. um, you know, there's a lot of self doubt in this process. There's a lot of room for anguish, for just that sense of dread and anxiety, and the moments that give you a little bit of confidence, these moments where you can look back at work and you feel that sense of like, yeah, I'm pretty damn good after all, aren't I? Yeah, rock it, rock it. Those moments are what make a difference. Those moments can be what kind of pulls you through a really bad slump, or can get you out of one. Those are the moments that, if you're kind of humming along, going well, that can keep your momentum going. It's a little bit of wind underneath the plane wings, right? Being a writer really is like being it's like building a paper airplane, and your works are those little sheets of paper flying through the air, and the confidence you can get, that belief in yourself is like a gust of wind every now and then, just keeping that plane going. Like every time it takes a dip in a dive, that little gust of wind, that bit of confidence, that bit of belief, is a little bit of gust of wind just to keep that plane pushed back up, to keep it soaring just a little bit longer. And if you can do that, if you can sustain that for a long period of time, that plane goes pretty far. That paper airplane you thought that was not going to go anywhere ends up going, potentially miles and miles and miles. One hopes. And that for me, what today was. Today was a chance to get that confidence built up as much as it was a chance to make these edits. Yeah. And so over the next month or so, that's my goal. I've given myself to the end of February to have this story rewritten, and then I'm going to be sending it out. I want to get these stories out, at least a few, relatively quickly. There's an element of impatience with myself. There's an element of frustration with not having gotten anything out yet. And so my desire to get something out relatively quickly is going to carry this over. It's going to carry over. So I got about, I don't know, what is it, like 6 weeks, something like that, 6-7 weeks to get this thing done. Should be plenty of time. Should be plenty of time to make edits, make revisions to it, and then, yeah, we're submitting it. We're sending it out to magazines. So look out, world, here it comes.